All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Another gigantic show ahead for you guys. So a little bit later in the program, unfortunately, more evidence of how sick our system is. And then in the second hour, a tiny bit of justice on a story that unfortunately showed how our system was sick in a different way. But like I said, a little bit of redemption today on that story. And then a world leader actually more misogynistic than Donald Trump, if you can believe it. We have a story about that today, and also a sea change in American politics potentially. Now that's a big statement. Well, it's a story that's not getting a lot of coverage, but it really, really should. We're gonna highlight it here. An argument could be made that an establishment Democrat has switched over and begun to come to our side, the progressive side. That's a big deal. So that's later in the program. I don't want you to miss that story. That's really important. All right, we're gonna start with fun in a second, and then of course, disaster, which in essence can describe the whole history of the Young Turks. Fun, then disaster. Speaking of the history of the Young Turks, by the way, if you wanna watch our Sweet 16 birthday party, we're holding it at the Globe Theater here in LA. Tickets have sold out, but if you become a member, you can watch it live from wherever you are in the world. So go to tytnetwork.com/sweet16, that's sweet16, and sign up for membership. It's $10, just like a ticket would have been. Okay, so let's go over here and have some fun. Well, recently, President Obama had his portrait revealed, and it was accomplished African-American artist who did it. So I was waiting for when the conservatives would strike, because the immediate reaction to it was generally very, very positive. Not from the right wing, of course, but from everyone else. Now, I don't have much of an opinion on it. Let's show you the portrait. And some people joked around that it was Obama between two ferns. But it's artistic. I don't know or understand much about art. God bless. Okay, so I have actually no opinion on it whatsoever. But Hannity and Alex Jones do not agree. They have a very strong opinion. Now, buckle up and brace for impact for what it is. Sean Hannity's website had this headline: "Portrait Perversion. Obama portrait features secret sperm." Plus, artist joked about killing Whitey. Okay, now we go to the heart of the article. I'm not kidding. That was a real article on Sean Hannity's website. Okay, it says the widening scandal. What scandal and how has it widened? Anyway, the widening scandal surrounding former President Barack Obama's official portrait continued to swirl, if you will, on Tuesday with shocking allegations the artist included secret sperm cells within the painting. What are we gonna do, man? One side of this country has lost its effing mind. So, okay, all right, so what's their evidence? Here, let's show you. Aha! Well, I've got to retract my skepticism. Well, there it is. No, I don't see it either. I don't know what they're talking about. Okay, like, so let's say that you see this thing on his forehead, right? How do you conclude it's sperm unless you got sperm on the mind? Like, how did that even jump into your head? Man, these guys are a bunch of unbelievable weirdos. So every once in a while we joke around about how the smallest Donald Trump scandal would have been the largest in Obama's 8 years in office. They're still inventing non-scandals to call scandals about Obama to this day. Aha! His portrait has sperm in the hair. Okay. Mediaite explains, while the conspiracy theorist accused the painter of being, quote, obsessed with sperm, Jones appears to be quite the semen expert himself. Now, we're going to Alex Jones. Okay, so hold on and come back for me. So I'm not positive, because this is all breaking right now, whether Alex Jones started it or Sean Hannity started it. I think based on the timeline I saw that Hannity started, but what difference does it make? Like in the old days, Alex Jones would start the lunacy, and then it would go jump to some of the conservative websites, Breitbart's, whatever, Daily Wire, Daily Caller, Daily anything, right? And then it would jump to Fox News. Now Sean Hannity's kind of short-circuited all that. He's like, what is the most insane thing that's going on with Donald Trump? Well, I'm in, all right? So So now Alex Jones also jumps in on the fun. That's when we go to Mediaite. They say, while the conspiracy theorists accuse the painter of being, quote, obsessed with sperm, Alex Jones appears to be quite the semen expert himself, as he made sure to inform listeners the bit of alleged sperm in question is actually a GMO sperm that is fully formed, as opposed to the other kinds of sperm viewers may be aware of. Okay, I have to confess, I don't know what GMO sperm is, nor do I wish to know, and I'm not sure I know the difference between fully formed sperm and non-fully formed sperm and how that relates back to the GMOs. But I do know that Alex Jones apparently does fancy himself quite the expert on semen. What is it with the right-wingers and their obsession with semen? You remember when we had Pastor Manning on here, the conservative pastor who hated Barack Obama? And he claimed, well, of course semen's delicious. Why do you think Starbucks is putting it in the coffee? Okay, I know, you're against gay rights. Anyway, you say, Alex Jones now, this is quoting InfoWars and Alex Jones. You say, but it doesn't make sense. So I'll do it in Alex's voice. It's so degenerate, but it's a religion of degeneracy. I'm already tired. Okay, it's what globalism is, he continues to explain. It's what Satanism is. So there you go, President Obama covered in sperm in the new national portrait, and it's all part of the joke in your face, because they don't want upright strength. They don't want to have everything, they want to have everything be a ritual of abomination. I lose track sometimes with Alex, because either things are an abomination or not. The sperm's on his face, no, the sperm's on your face. Okay, by the way, why would a really liberal African-American artist, which is what they charge him with being, want to put sperm on Barack Obama's face? If you did a portrait of Donald Trump and had it all over, okay, I at least get the motivation. Okay, it doesn't matter, they're all Satanists, globalists. It's all part of the abomination. How can you listen to these guys with a straight face? Come on, all right. So Hannity, realizing this isn't playing well, put out a statement saying, earlier today, my web staff posted content was not reviewed by me before publication. It does not reflect my voice and message, and therefore I had it taken down. In other words, that is my staffer right there underneath a bus that I've thrown him under. Okay, fine, but that does not explain the next blog post they had, which was about George Washington's portrait. So let me show you that. They claim that he's got sperm all over his head. All right, fine, they don't, but if you think that's not next, okay, you're not paying attention. Okay. And I'm supposed to not call them lunatics? Okay. God help us, man. People listen to those folks who go, oh yeah, absolutely, man. Sean knows what he's talking about. He's got this shit on lockdown. All right, anyway, let's go to the next story. So now it gets a little bit more troubling. Okay. So in Minnesota, the Republican Party has decided that they're going to take a bold stance against infiltration of the Republican Party by Muslims. Which Muslims are trying to infiltrate the Republican Party in Minnesota? Okay, maybe we'll find out at the end here, because there is one group that they're concerned about. So conservative activists in Minnesota introduced a resolution last week to, quote, minimize and eliminate the influence of Islam in the state's Republican Party. HuffPost is reporting this, okay? They explain who it is. It's Jeff Bauman, a notorious anti-Muslim activist in Minnesota's Senate District 36, also urged the resolution that, quote, no Islamic leader, religious or otherwise, shall ever be allowed to deliver the invocation at any Republican convention or event. So, because Muslims were threatening to come over and pray for Republicans, but God forbid, I suppose maybe literally, no, we don't want your prayers. We know it's a trick. Okay, fine. The resolution further called for legislation, policies, and educational programs to be implemented so as to evermore minimize and eliminate the influence of Islam within Minnesota, including Minnesota schools. All right, well, this is obviously wildly unconstitutional. In America, we're not supposed to discriminate among the religions. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state. And it says very, very clearly in the United States Constitution, which apparently Republicans have never read, that we shall not establish a religion. And so when you exclude other religions to the benefit of Christianity or other religions, that is obviously deeply unconstitutional. But they don't love this country. They hate this country. They don't believe in freedom of religion. They would like to live in a theocracy. So that's why guys like Jeff Bauman go and try to discriminate against other religions. Now, I don't happen to believe in any of the religions, but I'm an American, so I believe they have the freedom to practice that religion and even pray for me if they want. I'm not sure it's going to do any good, but they can go for it. And certainly I don't need to pass laws that specifically and only discriminate against one religion. I think that is preposterous and as un-American as it gets. Now, Bauman continued that there is a natural tension, he said, between Islam and the US Constitution. Ironic, because apparently Bauman's never read the US Constitution. Calling the religion a collective where there is very little room for Muslims to have independent thought. He also said Muslim Americans currently involved in politics are, quote, dishonest. All of them? Blanket statements about one religion. I suppose we shouldn't be surprised at all in the adherence of that religions. And then my favorite is Muslims. They have no independent thought. Whereas the other religions in this country, particularly evangelical Christians, have a lot of independent thought. That is why their leaders tell them, God has selected Donald Trump, so you must bow your head and vote for Donald Trump. And they did. 81% of evangelicals voted for Donald Trump. And now when asked by pollsters if they have changed their mind, they have quotes such as, and we previously reported this on the show, people saying, well, God chose them, so obviously God can't be wrong. Now, what was that about very little room for independent thought? Okay, but I'm sure it's only the Muslims. Okay, and by the way, if you made this case against all the religions, then I'm right there with you. I've got issues with religions. I'm agnostic. I don't believe in any of the religions. But we can have a debate about the religions, but we cannot exclude the religious in America. That's not how this country works. Okay, Bauman claimed that Muslims have a fundamentally different vision for how society and government should be organized, and that the future of Muslim Americans in leadership positions would be one of civil war, genocide, concentration camps, and other horrible, horrible things. Well, if the rest of it wasn't clear enough, he wants you to understand, no. The Muslims who are about to take over the Republican Party in Minnesota, that's why you need all these laws. And they're about to take over the whole state, that they're gonna set up concentration camps for everyone else. He says this without a hint of irony, as he tells you, let's remember, we should discriminate against them. We should separate them out. We should not give them equal justice. We should treat them differently. You see how they are in favor of discrimination. Almost everything with Republicans and conservatives these days is projection. Okay, in the past, Bauman has spoken against building mosques in Minnesota, describing it as treason and aiding the enemy. Okay, unsurprising. Now, it's not just Bauman, it is other Republicans in Minnesota as well. By the way, they reached out to the whole Republican Party in Minnesota. They have yet to comment. They're still thinking about it. Muslims, are they going to do concentration camps or not? I'm not quite sure. Should they be banned completely and their mosques raided? Still debating it. But here's some other Republicans from Minnesota. Jeff Johnson, a leading Republican candidate for Minnesota governor, defended the GOP lawmakers in a conservative podcast earlier this month. He said there are some here who are trying to change what America is, he said, and we can't allow that. God, that is so ironic. Now, we want to make sure that we establish a religion in America and we're discriminating against one religion in particular. Can you believe they want to change America? They're the worst. Okay, so, but they're not alone. If you remember, Michelle Bachmann recently spoke out against Muslims as well. She's also a Republican from Minnesota. Now, there was a case recently in Minnesota where a mom who was a yoga instructor who was shot by a cop. And now you'd think, why would Michelle Bachmann speak out against that? She normally protects all the cops who've shot unarmed people. Well, in this case, the person who was shot was a white woman, and the cop who did the shooting was Somali, and hence Muslim and black. So now all of a sudden she hates the cops, depending on, of course, what race they are and what religion they are. So here's what she had to say at the time.
Look at Saturday night. Look what happened Saturday night in this state. We had a man, Mohammed Noor, who was an affirmative action hire by the hijab-wearing mayor of Minneapolis, Betsy Hodges. We don't know exactly what happened. We don't know. All we know is that a beautiful 40-year-old Australian woman thought she heard a sexual assault ongoing in the alley behind her home at Washburn and 51st Street in Minneapolis. So she called 911. Mohammed Moore, we know, unholstered himself, pulled out his gun, violating protocol, reached across the chest of his partner riding in the car and shot the woman through the window in her abdomen, killing her. I'm not condemning this police officer because I don't know, but I do know in that culture, the women are covered from head to toe. And a woman in her pajamas standing out in the alleyway, we don't know again why it happened. But what I'm wondering is this: will the question that the BCA is conducting, will they ask cultural questions?
God, they're so abhorrent, man. There was 1,000 things she said in there that were outrageous. We've covered it in the past, so I'll mention one thing there. In their culture, the women have to be covered head to toe, and she was in her pajamas. She's implying that the cop shot that woman because he was offended that she wasn't wearing a hijab. What percentage of people in Minnesota wear a hijab? Do you think that cop was shooting every woman who wasn't wearing a hijab? Are you nuts? Are you insane? And the answer to that is, of course she is. Of course she is. So, all right, one more about the Republicans here, and then I got a message for Muslim Americans. So, HuffPost says his resolution, Bauman's, comes at a moment of acute prejudice against Muslims in the North Star State. Recently, 2 Republican state lawmakers and a local GOP official in Minnesota came under fire for reportedly sharing a Facebook post that accused Muslims of preparing to, quote, infiltrate the party's caucuses after a group of Muslims had attended a caucus training session held at a local mosque. So here's my point to you guys. Look, is it a giant surprise that Republicans, particularly in the state of Minnesota apparently, and it's not just one person, it is now, we've talked about 6 different people in this story, all Minnesota Republicans, are against Muslims. It's not that surprising. But look, and it's terrible, and if they had said it about any other religion, everybody would be going crazy right now. Almost no one has heard of this story. So if they had said, oh man, the Jews, the problem is the Jews, they're gonna set up concentration camps and we need to raid their temples and make sure that no Jews are ever allowed to give a prayer, etc. I mean, people would be outraged, and rightfully so. I mean, your hair should be on fire when you hear stuff like that. But now in America, unfortunately, we've gotten used to it when it's about Muslims, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, those people despise Muslims, and I guess that's okay. It isn't okay, but if you're a Muslim American, my main message to you is, you're gonna vote Republican? Any of you? Have you lost your mind? Look at what they think of you. They loathe you. I remember growing up, I grew up in a Muslim family. We were secular, so we never really went to mosque, and eventually I became agnostic, and so did my dad, and et cetera, and my sister and everybody else. Anyway, but we knew Muslims, right? And they were split. They were split 50% Republican, 50% Democrat, roughly. It's obviously anecdotal, but but that was our sense of it. Now, unless you're a Muslim billionaire and you think, hey, look, man, maybe one day they lock me up, and I know that they don't want me to have equal rights, but I am going to get a giant tax cut. At least I understand it. But if you're not a billionaire and you're a Muslim American and you're voting Republican, you're insane. They hate you. They can't stand you, and they can't wait to pass laws that discriminate against you. Buyer beware. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Now, let's go to, unfortunately, more prejudice and hypocrisy. But that's what the Republicans do. All right, so. Recently, of course, there was the Rob Porter scandal in the White House. There's a very important staffer who it turns out was alleged to have beaten a couple of his wives, and then a third person as well who was seeking advice from the wives on how to get the abuse to stop. And Donald Trump, of course, defended him. Now, he has resigned and he's no longer at the White House, but when Donald Trump was asked about it, he said that he wishes him a wonderful career. Here we go. Said he wished him a wonderful career, and said that he felt bad for him, but he did not talk about the victims at all. And he said there was no talk of feeling bad for them. He just felt bad that the person who was accused of all this violence and domestic abuse had to suffer through the allegations. And then he tweeted out, people's lives are being shattered and destroyed by a mere allegation. Some are true and some are false, some are old and some are new. There's no recovery for someone falsely accused. Life and career are gone. Is there no such thing any longer as due process? Well, that's a good question. So I'd like to ask Donald Trump the same question. Because if you don't know this story, you should. It's an amazing one. Back in the late 1980s, there was this woman who was raped in Central Park. And it was a giant news story in New York. And 5 young African-American men were accused of raping her. Now, at the time, they had not had due process. And no one knew for sure that they had done it. Now, later we found out they had not done it. But Donald Trump at the time was not interested in due process. He's, as Mediaite explains, Yusuf Salaam and Raymond Santana were wrongfully convicted of raping and assaulting a jogger back in the 90s. Trump not only called for their executions with a full-page New York Times ad, but he still believes the 2 men are guilty despite both of them being exonerated by DNA evidence. We have the actual rapist. We have his DNA, he's been convicted, we know who the actual guy is. Look, before I go to the videos actually of the 2 guys now, they were on CNN last night. I want to show you what Donald Trump did back then. So this is 1989 and then it stretches into the 1990s as their case goes forward. But he took out an ad in actually 4 different papers, including the New York Daily News. He spent $85,000 on the ads and also put a full-page ad in the New York Times. And here's that ad. It said, "Bring back the death penalty. Bring back our police." This is before they were convicted. This is before anybody had any idea if it was true or untrue. As it turns out, they were wrongfully convicted, but he didn't even wait for the conviction. Due process. He called for their execution. Gee, I wonder what's the difference between those young black guys and his own staffer. I can't quite tell. He said in that advertisement, they should be forced to suffer. And when they kill, they should be executed for their crimes. I want to hate these murderers, and I always will. I no longer want to understand their anger. I want them to be afraid. Due process. Donald Trump, due process. I'm going to show you his tweet after they were exonerated. But first, let me go to Yusuf Salaam. He was on with Anderson Cooper. He was one of the ones who were wrongfully accused, wrongfully convicted, and now a free man.
And what we're seeing is clearly that there are 2 separate Americas. One America for blacks and people of color, and another America for whites and people of affluence. You know, I mentioned the fact that with what he's doing for the Good Old Boys Club, you know, in his own affluenza, he's saying, hey, look, let's not rush to judge. You know, the guy said that he's innocent of these particular charges. As a matter of fact, he strongly said it. We strongly said the same thing back in 1989. We strongly said that we weren't the ones who did this crime. In their rush to judgment, at the behest, I want to say, of a person like Donald Trump, taking out those ads early on, the whole city, the jury pool was muddied, and so they looked at what was going on and said, man, these guys have to be guilty of something. Look at them.
Due process. What a joke Donald Trump is. Here's Raymond Santana.
At the end of the day, race does play a part in this, right? Because here we were, black and Latino boys who were 14 and 15 years old, and he didn't mind giving it the death penalty. Now, you know, here you also have women who he's speaking out against, you know, with the sexual assault stuff. And I mean, at the end of the day, this is his character.
Exactly right. So when we find out that they didn't do it, we get the guy who did do it, DNA match, conviction, the whole thing, there's no question about it at all. Did Donald Trump apologize? Of course not. Instead, he sent this tweet at the time. He said, "Tell me, what were they doing in the park? Playing checkers?" Wow. In other words, they must have been guilty of something. Who cares that they weren't guilty of the rape or the murder or anything? Let's, keep them in jail anyway? If you'd gotten your way, they would have already been dead. You would have already executed them. Due process? Now he's got the nerve to talk about due process. Look, for conservatives like Donald Trump, rule of law doesn't mean equal justice. It means I get to rule over you. So if it's me and my allies, we're above the law, and the law doesn't have to apply to us, and we get every protection. If it's you, I get to lord over you, and I get to use the law to keep you down. That's what they mean by rule of law. Donald Trump is the world's biggest hypocrite, and you know why he viewed those young black men different than he viewed his own staffer. It is obvious. He's a despicable guy, and he certainly doesn't believe in due process. Okay, now, last story in this segment for you guys. This one's a little bit lighter. Okay. So there's an interesting election going on in Wisconsin. Tammy Baldwin's the current senator there, and she's being challenged by Republican Kevin Nicholson, and he's giving her a run for the money, and I'll tell you why at the end. But something curious happened in the race. Just months after Republican Kevin Nicholson announced his bid to run against incumbent Senator Tammy Baldwin in 2018, Nicholson's own parents donated the legal maximum to Baldwin's primary campaign. Damn, that hurts. Shots fired. Man, if you can't get your own parents to be on your side, oh, ouch. Okay, not only did they donate to his opponent, not to forget voting for his opponent, they donated to his opponent, and then they gave the max. Nicholson's parents, Donna and Michael, reportedly donated $2,700 to Baldwin in December of 2017. I mean, presumably nobody knows Kevin Nicholson better than his parents, and they're like, "You don't want him as a senator. I don't want him as a senator. I'm gonna give the max I can to his opponent." Oh, wow, oh, that's cold, man. That's super cold. Nicholson says, "My parents have a different worldview than I do. It's not surprising that they would support a candidate like Tammy Baldwin who shares their perspective." Look, you know, it's certainly possible, of course. Even if it's your own son, if you don't agree with his policies, you can vote for the other person. Voting's one thing. Maxing out donations to your opponent is another thing. Man, if my son grew up to be a right-wing douche and I couldn't stand him so much, I had to give the max to his opponent in a race, oh, that would be heartbreaking. And I wouldn't do that, I feel like, under penalty of law. Man, you really, really gotta be worried about your own kid if you're doing that and giving that much to his opponent to make sure he doesn't get anywhere near the Senate. Wow. Now, Baldwin's gonna need all the help she can get. You know why? Because our system is insane. It is totally corrupted. It's a total open auction. Get a load of this. The election is months away. It's in November. We're in February. By early January, 9 groups had spent more than $4.7 million on ads that attack Baldwin or boost one of the Republicans vying to oppose her, according to her campaign. They've already spent $4.7 million in ads against Baldwin. Who are they? No one knows. It's rich people who decided they would rather have a Republican who cuts their taxes and gives them all the tax breaks, who deregulates their businesses. And we've got an open auction, so they're like, I don't care who this Republican's, what he's for, who supports him, who's against him, what his character is. I want the tax cuts, Lebowski. So they don't care. Tammy Baldwin, you voted against tax cuts for the rich. You want to do anything to help the actual citizens and not the donors, you got to go. So they're hammering her with ads. Does this look like a democracy to you? It's a frickin' auction, man. You allow private financing, you get people working for private interests. It's gross. Wolf-pack.com. Get all the money out. wolf-pack.com/join. Go to your own state, volunteer, work hard. wolf-pack.com/states. Find your state, go volunteer, donate, do whatever you got to do, because our warriors have to beat these mercenaries. It's a funny little story about a guy whose parents apparently are very worried about him having any degree of power. But the overall story is not funny at all, because right now there's right-wingers trying to buy that seat. And in our system, because we've legalized bribery, they can. The system is totally gross. All right, we got to take a break here. When we come back, speaking of a sick system, I have a heartbreaking story that is quite literal about how sick this system is. I hate to do it to you, but it is a powerful story, and you'll see why we absolutely, positively must have universal health care coverage. All right, we'll be right back.
A progressive future requires a different kind of financial industry. I'm Joe Sandberg. I'm co-founder of Aspiration.com, an online financial firm you can fall in love with. The American financial industry came to serve itself and profit. I believe in a different path for business. Business should be about serving people, and that profit is a byproduct of serving people well. Aspiration.com is about our customers and our movement. We use what we call pay what's fair. You, as the customer, have the power to choose your fee. We trust you that if we do a good job for you, you'll choose to pay us. 10% of the fees that you choose to pay, we give to charity. Many of you are passionate about the environment and reversing the effects of climate change, but many of you also may be banking at a big institution that funds things like Dakota Access. It made clear what's inherently broken about Wells Fargo and so much of the financial industry. These organizations are obsessed not with serving people, but with serving themselves and their profit. You can stop Doppel by taking your money out of banks that fund Doppel and put your money into financial institutions like Aspiration.com. You don't have to sacrifice your values to do well financially. And that's why our motto at Aspiration is do well, do good. We have a popular fossil fuel-free, firearm-free, private prison-free, sustainable investing fund at Aspiration called the Redwood Fund. And the minimum is just $100. The power and future is yours to determine. The choices you make with your money matter. And that's why we built Aspiration, because there's a different, better way to deliver both great banking and investing services that meet your needs and also match your values.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Couple of tweets for you. Control Left says, why are evangelical Christians so scared of Muslims? If the Old Testament is to be believed, the Christian God is the greatest terrorist of all time. Well, read the Old Testament. I hear you. He does kill a lot of folks. And by the way, at the end, through Armageddon, he kills almost everyone on the planet. But if you read it carefully enough, there is actually a verse in there where, quote unquote, our God loses to another God. So I'm not quite sure why we're not praying to that dude. Okay, read the Bible. It is fascinating. Jeremy Kohler says, can we talk for a second about how that Trump tweet sounded like he had just finished reading a Dr. Seuss book? Some are old and some are new. I know, I thought the same thing. And then J. Thomas Gordy said, I feel like Donald Trump's about to experience a lot of due process. Well, from your mouth to God's ears. Okay, so now let's go over here and do some more stories. So we've got a story of a lovely second grade teacher in Ickard Elementary School in Weather, Texas. Her name is Heather Holland. There she is. And like I said, she's in the middle of Texas. She's teaching elementary school. And then she gets sick. It happens to a lot of us, okay? And it is flu season and she got the flu. Holland went to a doctor and was prescribed flu medication. But when she went to pick it up and learned that about the $116 copay, she decided to forego the prescription, believing it wasn't worth the money. Now, this has happened to a lot of us. Copay is too much. In our crazy system, and we're the only developed nation in the world that does not have universal health care coverage, we're all supposed to fend for ourselves, just bootstraps, okay? And so some people have good insurance, some people have insurance that isn't so good. Under the Affordable Care Act, you were supposed to get some degree of minimum coverage, and now under the new rules, they can make your coverage worse and worse, so your deductibles are higher and your copay is higher. But either way, and to be fair, I don't know the kind of coverage that Heather Holland had. I do know that her copay is really high for medication for the flu, so she decided that she's got 2 kids, didn't want to spare the money. When Holland's husband found out about the copay incident on Thursday night, he went back to the pharmacy and bought the prescription himself. But by that point, her condition had swiftly deteriorated. The flu, unfortunately, is nothing to mess with, and it kills a lot of people. So you got to act, and you got to act quick. But in our brutal system, people are worried about $116. That's a lot of money to people. On Sunday morning, Holland passed away from flu complications, leaving behind her husband, a 10-year-old daughter, and a 7-year-old son. We're not supposed to do this to our own citizens. So we have private health insurance. Their job is not to take care of you. Their job is to maximize profit. I mean, I don't blame them for that. They're a corporation. We created corporations. They're written into the law. They did not exist in nature. You can't go into the woods and find a corporation. We created them, and we wrote the laws. And the law says maximize profit at all costs. And then we said, oh, by the way, you can get into healthcare. But if you're into healthcare, you don't really have to worry about the patients or your customers. Your only directive is maximize profit. So somebody's got the flu, they can't afford it, who cares? Charge them $116. Charge them every single dollar you think you could squeeze out of them, because that's going to maximize your profit. Now, other developed countries believe that they should protect their citizens. That a democracy, the whole point is to look out for your citizens. Not in America. Our whole government has now been captured by corporations. Their job is to look out for corporations, and if we get crushed along the way, it is what it is. Universal health care coverage, no, we're not going to get it. If you don't have insurance at all, you certainly will die. And even if you have insurance, your copay or deductible can be so high, it bankrupts you. And now we're going to go back to the days of pre-existing conditions. And on it goes, this brutal, brutal system. I'm going to quote Frank Holland, the husband here. I have to be strong for the kids, but it's still surreal. It hasn't all set in. We've been together a long time, over half my life. She's my best friend, my soulmate, my everything. But Heather Holland is gone because her copay was too expensive. If we can't have a system better than this, who are we? All right. All right, let's go to another policy position where Trump was supposed to be on the progressive side. Want to figure out how this story ends? Okay. So Donald Trump said during the campaign that he was going to devote a lot of money to infrastructure. Well, that sounded like a really positive thing. And I told you during the campaign that he had a lot of positions that were actually progressive and populist. He wanted to end the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He talked about ending loopholes for the hedge funds. And he wanted to go after the bankers, and he said he would protect Social Security and Medicare. Now, I told you that almost all of those were lies, and it turns out, yeah, he kept the loophole for the hedge funds in his tax bill. He doesn't care. He was lying to you the whole time. He just proposed a budget where they're going to cut Medicare by hundreds of billions of dollars. Why? Because there's no money left, because they gave so much in tax cuts to the rich. TPP, he did actually stop the negotiations, but he just went to Davos with the globalists and said, oh, no, we'll make that deal better and get back in. Well, how about infrastructure? He had promised infrastructure. Well, there is $200 billion in his budget for infrastructure, but overall spending is $1.7 billion. Or I'm sorry, 1.3 trillion, I should say. So where's the rest of the money coming from? From private corporations. Okay, is that a good thing? Well, let's find out. We go to, first of all, what the White House says. Tolling restrictions, they explain, foreclose what might otherwise serve as a major source of revenue for infrastructure investment. Providing states flexibility to toll existing interstates would generate additional revenues for states to invest in surface transportation infrastructure. So let me translate that for you. We're going to build tolls everywhere. For a long time in America, the great majority of the national highway system and the interstate highway system was toll-free. Donald Trump would like to end that. So he's saying, well, private corporations are going to put money in, and then they're going to want to maximize profit. So not only will they get their money back, but they'll get some money on top of that. So at the end of the day, who's going to pay for the roads? You are. Now look, you put taxes in, we build them at a reasonable rate, and it helps everyone. It helps you to get from point A to point B. It helps businesses. When Eisenhower helped to build interstate highways, it helped business boom. And we did that through taxes, and it still made sense, and it still created a bigger, larger, more successful economy. It lifted all boats. Now we're not going to do that. We're going to privatize all the roads, and then you are going to be paying tolls forever. This is actually deeply unpopular, even among conservatives. I'm going to explain that in a second. But of course, that means it's bipartisan. If there is something that is for corporate interests only and against all the citizens, then both parties agree to it. So whenever you see on TV that there's no bipartisan agreement, that is not true. They often agree on things that would rob us. In this case, Obama agreed to this too. Barack Obama's administration, for example, repeatedly proposed lifting current prohibitions on states placing tolls on existing highway lanes. Proponents of the move argue that it would create new sources of badly needed revenue, one that could find more support in Congress than an increase in federal gas tax. So, as usual, Obama didn't plan to do it at the scale that Trump is planning. But he thought, yeah, privatize the roads, bring in tolls. Congress will then agree. Why will Congress agree? Because they're owned by the donors. Democrats agree, the Republicans agree. The only people who don't agree are the citizens. Now, let me show you how deeply unpopular it is. Not just among progressives, but again, among conservatives. So we go to the deep red state of Texas. The statewide push to privatize highways in Texas suffered a backlash from angry commuters who complained about exorbitant late fees and costly toll bills. In December, the state's transportation officials voted against constructing new toll roads after opposition from Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Those guys are very, very conservative. So they're like, okay, donors, you gonna give us money? All right, we'll make all the citizens pay tax. By the way, in essence, it's a different form of tax, right? But you pay it forever. We'll make them pay tolls forever on the highways. Turns out conservatives didn't like that either. They're like, I don't want to do that. That's terrible. And it's a pain in the ass too. Not only are you paying, it's a regressive tax. So it's a tiny, tiny fraction of the income of the rich, but it's a bigger fraction of the income of the middle class and the poor. But on top of that, you got to stop at the tolls, or you got to get the thing in your car that lets you go through the tolls, but God forbid you let it lapse, or you didn't get it in the first place, or you went in the wrong lane, and then you got fines and tickets, and it all adds up. Those are all a way of taxing you, the middle class and the poor. And like I said, it's a fraction of the income of the rich. So it's a way of redistributing the wealth to the top and taking it from you. And it turns out that was a bridge too far and a road too far, apparently, for even Republicans in Texas. They're like, yeah, this one I get, okay? No, I vote no. And then all of a sudden, Abbott and Patrick are like, backpedal, backpedal, backpedal. Did we say tolls? No. Tolls are an outrage. We're against tolls. Doesn't matter. It's now coming to the national level to the tune of trillions of dollars. Hopefully, we will stop it. But if we don't, get ready to pay no matter where you drive for the rest of your life. Okay. Now, let me go to the Sea Change event. Might give us a little bit of hope in politics. So I'll give you some bad news as usual, but here's some potentially very good news. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is from New York. If I'm being honest, and that's what we do here, she has been more in the establishment wing of the Democratic Party. We believe that she is likely to run in 2020 for president. So today, she came out with a dramatic announcement, and it really is dramatic. And I would argue that it is even maybe a harbinger of a sea change in Democratic politics. Let me show you what it is, and then I'll tell you the consequences and why it's so important.
The effect of corporate money in politics. I've decided from this point on, I am no longer accepting corporate PAC checks into my campaign. So one of the reasons why I'm so concerned about money in politics is because of the Supreme Court decision, Citizens United. We have a system where corporations can spend unlimited money that isn't even disclosed, so there's no transparency. Since I was first elected in 2006, I've made it my mission to create more transparency and accountability in Congress. And so I was the first member of Congress to actually post my schedule, my earmark requests, and my financial disclosure online. And I've since added to that my taxes. So I hope you will stand with me. We really need to make every effort we can to get rid of the corporate money and dark money that is flowing into politics. And my effort to ban corporate PAC checks is just a first step in that direction.
Okay, that is a giant deal. So it started a little bit at a time, and there were a lot of us who were saying, hey, corporate PAC money is corrupting. And those are true blue progressives who were saying that. And then some congressmen started saying, you know what, I'm not gonna take any corporate PAC money anymore. So Congressman Ro Khanna stopped taking corporate PAC money. Beto O'Rourke in Texas now running for Senate against Ted Cruz, no corporate PAC money. And then it grew and it grew. And then there's a separate wing of the Democratic Party called the Justice Democrats. None of them are allowed to take corporate PAC money. They're all uncorrupted. There's now 51 Democratic candidates across the country that are all Justice Democrats, all not taking corporate PAC money. And then more incumbents, Raul Grijalva, he's now a Justice Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard, no corporate PAC money. And then the Senate, Elizabeth Warren, no corporate PAC money. And now, Gillibrand, what most people in politics would consider bedrock establishment Democrat, now saying no more corporate PAC money. Now, look, I have a sense that some progressives will be skeptical. And I'll give you the full context here in a second. But know when you have won, okay? We're nowhere near getting money out of politics. We have a very, very long road to go. But when someone comes to your side, for God's sake, celebrate it, reward it, and feel great about it. If you had asked me if Senator Gillibrand is not gonna take corporate PAC money a year ago, I would have said, no way she's gonna do that. But here she is. If you think, oh, it's because she wants to win in 2020, Great. You know what that means? That means people as savvy as Senator Gillibrand have realized the Democratic Party is actually progressive. If I want to get those voters, there's no more tricks. There's not enough ads I could buy. I actually have to stop taking the corporate money. That's wonderful. So here's more context from Roll Call. Her prohibition includes contributions from PACs connected to trade associations and law firms. Her spokesman, Glenn Kaplan, told Roll Call in an email saying the goal was to, quote, get corporate money out of politics, okay? Now, she's still taking some PAC money. Let's explain. PAC money from labor unions is still welcome, Kaplan said. Also, PACs have amounted to about 15%, this is more context, of Gillibrand's donations over her career in the House and Senate, according to data from Nonpartisan Center for Responsive Politics. And one more here, labor PACs represented about 14% of Gillibrand's PAC dollars, while ideological or single issue PACs amounted to more than 20%, the center's data showed. But the overwhelming majority of the PAC money was corporate PAC money, 65% of it, and now that is gone. She's putting that money aside and saying, I don't want it. I just can't praise it enough. Look, Barack Obama said that he was for change. To me, change is systemic change. When you change the system, you change the rules. Why do we need to change the rules? Because our democracy's been corrupted by the corporate money in politics. Now, Obama talked a good game and he had a lot of placards that said change, but when he got in office, he did almost nothing for real change in that regard. And the system remained exactly as it was. I remember Obama ran an ad saying, I'm not going to try to play the Washington politics and games a little bit better. I'm going to change the game. Changing the game was getting money out of politics, and he didn't do it. So sometimes the Democrats will say, what do you want, unilateral disarmament, where we don't take the money and they do? Well, I want you to be uncorrupted. I believe that that actually will give you better electoral results. But most importantly, I want you to work towards getting money out of politics. And if you're a candidate, and you're no longer taking corporate money and corporate PAC money, you know what that means? You're going to work really hard to make sure that no one can take corporate PAC money. Great. It's mission accomplished on two fronts. One, you're no longer corrupted by the corporate PAC money as a candidate and as a senator. And number two, you're incentivized to work super hard to get that money out of politics. So no matter what you think her intentions are or why she did it, you have to understand that this is a wonderful moment, not just for Senator Gillibrand, but for the progressive movement. It doesn't mean that we have won that victory. When we get a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics, still a good distance, and organizations like Wolfpack, wolf-pac.com are working hard, and you should join them to make that happen. Once you get the amendment, that is rewriting the rules. That is real change. That's changing the game and bringing our democracy back so that the politicians serve their voters and not their donors. But this is a very important step in that direction. Doesn't mean we've won, but it does mean we have begun to win. Hopefully, soon we'll get tired of winning. Get all the money out. Okay, I got to take a quick break here. I have some news out of the Republicans and Democrats. Some of it surprising, some of it not remotely surprising when we return. back on the Young Turks. I'm just going to read you a couple of tweets about the healthcare story and that poor woman in Texas who died. Sean Ferris says, if you're not a single payer now voter, you're okay with folks dying for profit. It's pretty simple. Brian Newton says, screw citizen or non-citizen. We shouldn't be doing this to any living things, especially fellow humans. And Jeremy Varner says, my grandmother was so burdened with medical debt near the end, with Medicare and her private supplement not willing to cover her prescriptions, that she was afraid to go to the doctor for a long time, meaning they missed the obvious tumor that eventually killed her. And if you watched the Medicare for All town hall that we put on or helped to put on for Bernie Sanders, you would see that in other countries, and they had experts and doctors from other countries on, they can just go to the doctor whenever they want and they don't die because they missed it. And not only that, it costs them less money. Half the money costs us. Why? Because the system is not built to maximize profit. So they save all the marketing costs, they save all the profits, all the millions of dollars, by the end, billions of dollars that executives make at those companies. You get rid of the insurance companies altogether. So they have better health care, it's humane, and it costs half as much. Our system is absolutely insane. All right. Look, and by the way, I want to thank all the members. Look, we got over 100 people who work here, and it's not easy or cheap to put on this show, Dan Rather's show, all the shows we have on, and all the new shows that are going to come, and all the member shows like Old School and Aggressive Progressive. I'm going to do Old School tomorrow night, even though it's Valentine's night. I'm going to risk my life to do Old School for you guys, and to do things like Bernie's Medicare for All Town Hall, and our members make that happen. So thank you guys. tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. All right, let's go over here, do one more story for you guys. Speaking of death before Anna murders. Okay. All right. Now, the Democrats were promised by Mitch McConnell that after they agreed to give up all their leverage and vote for the Republican budget, that the Republicans would then let them have a debate, a hearing on immigration. So that's where they could go to protect the Dreamers. And Democrats were quite excited by this. Senator Chris Coons, a Democrat of Delaware, said, I've been here 7 years and never seen anything like it. Who knows? Democracy may very well break out in here. So excited, we're gonna get a debate. We're gonna get to finally talk about it, and we're gonna propose the bill, and there's gonna be amendments, and finally, immigration reform. We're gonna do it, especially DACA and protecting the Dreamers. Well, Talking Points memo reporting today, that excitement quickly turned to frustration as Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell confirmed Tuesday morning that he wants the entire debate on the half-dozen-plus competing proposals put forward so far by lawmakers to be over by the end of the week. It's only a couple of days left. Now, they debated how to end Obamacare for months on top of months, let alone for years upon years, where they proposed and passed that legislation in the House. But when it comes to immigration reform, congratulations, you've got a couple of days. And come to find out that the Democrats are shocked and chagrined. But first, a quote from Mitch McConnell, rubbing it in. He says, senators have had plenty of time to prepare. There's no reason why we should not reach a bipartisan solution this week. I made a commitment to hold this debate and to hold it this week. I've lived up to my commitment. I hope everyone will cooperate so this opportunity does not go to waste. In other words, I said that I'd give you a chance to propose your bill. I didn't tell you how long we were going to consider it. Turns out we're going to consider it for a couple of days and then shut this thing down. Idiots, suckers. Hey, I lived up to my commitment. Now the Democrats are in a panic. They're like, wait, there's no way you can get that bill done in this couple of days. And by the way, the Dreamers start getting deported March 5th. Now, the Senate, as always, as usual, is going to be on break next week. They're almost always on break. So you got a couple of days, and that's it, they start deporting people. Senate Democratic aide says, Republican leadership shouldn't try to short-circuit bipartisan discussions at this point. Senators haven't agreed to any time limit. You morons, you pathetic weasels. What do we tell you? Like Mitch McConnell, man of his word, he was going to really give you a full hearing? No, It was always a trick. Right now in the House, Paul Ryan's getting pressured to do a more draconian immigration bill, not less, more. So you know what they're going to do? They say, now if you want just a temporary pass for Dreamers for 3 years, which expires later, we want a permanent ban on family-based immigration. So in order to save the Dreamers for 3 years, we want a permanent ban on legal immigration, plus money for the wall, plus more ICE agents to deport people, and plus end sanctuary cities. Absolutely draconian. They're like, here, debate this. These Democrats. No, can anyone really be that naive and stupid? No, they knew the Republicans were going to screw them, but they're not screwing the Democrats. They're fine. They're super comfortable. They're screwing the Dreamers and the actual progressives who cared about the issue. But when's the last time the Democrats cared about that? So here's Senator John Cornyn, number 2 Republican in the Senate, rubbing it in. He says, touche, but who does, referring to an earlier tweet, but only deal was date and fair and open process, delivered as promised. Clock is ticking, so I'm anxious to see the Democrats counteroffer to POTUS's proposal that can become law. None so far. Hey, we just gave you a couple of days, and within the last couple of hours, when we sprung this on you, you didn't have a proposal ready. Tick tock, clock is ticking. You only have 2 days left. And then we end this and start deporting people. Idiot Democrats are rubbing it in your face. What did you think, we were gonna be fair and open? No, we're gonna play a trick like we always do. And then you go out there and do your job, and your job is to say, in front of all the cameras, but there was nothing we could do. So, true to form, here comes Senator Dick Durbin, the second leading Democrat in the Senate, God help us. He says, I told Mitch McConnell, looking him in the eye, I trust you. I think you made it clear that you're going to be fair on the floor, and I've defended you to some Democrats who are skeptical. And how'd that work out for you, Dick? He played you for a fool, but only for the millionth time in a row. Hey, Dick Durbin and all the rest of you, and Chris Coons, etc., why don't you just admit it? You don't give a damn about progressives. You never care about policy positions. All you care about is your own power and privilege. And in the midst of that debate, I told you guys a story, heavily reported, that the thing that the Democrats were most upset about and why they shut the government down for just 3 days, Republicans and Democrats couldn't come to an agreement. Democrats stood their ground for just 3 days. Why? Because they were mad that the Republicans had not properly consulted them. So it was never about you. It was never about your priorities. It was never about the voters. And when the Republicans consulted them and promised them that their issues would be addressed at a later time after they give them their votes today, the Democrats said, oh, of course. Oh, don't threaten the markets. All my donors are all incredibly rich and all their money's in the stock market. I can't have a government shutdown. I can't have the debt ceiling not lifted. That would affect the beloved markets. Voters. You know what? Dick Durbin finds out today that Mitch McConnell was not fair to him, that he did not deliver on the promises he explained. And Dick Durbin is surprised for the 89th time in a row. Either Dick Durbin is incredibly stupid, one of the dumbest guys in the country, or much more likely, he's paid to lose by his donors. And probably he doesn't even know it. He's like, oh, I don't know. Everybody I was on the phone with, because I was raising money 4 or 5 hours a day. Hey, rich person. Hey, millionaire. Hey, billionaire. What do you think? Oh, the markets. Oh my God. I'm not shutting the government down. I'm not shutting it down. The rich don't want it to shut down. I mean, my voters. No, that's your donors. They don't want you to shut it down. DACA. Well, I never got a check from a dreamer. I'll get to them later. Oh, Mitch McConnell lied to me. Oh, golly gee, I've been tricked again. These Democrats are the worst of the worst. At least you see the Republicans, unless you're a Democratic senator and a giant fool or pretending to be one, you see the Republicans coming at you from the front. Young Turks. back on again. Turks, Cenk, and Anna with you. Matt Diedrich tweets in, by the way, use hashtag TYT Live on Twitter when we are live, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern to talk to us. And also during Rebel headquarters, that's basically 8 to 8:30 Eastern. And even in the postgame, sometimes I'll read tweets. Okay, Matt Diedrich writes in, Illinois is tired of being dicked, referring to Dick Durbin.
Oh, okay.
And Mark Sean Russia writes in, when I get a job again, I'll be able to sign back up for membership. Stop making me feel bad.
Aww.
Mark, no, it's okay, guys. Look, if you watch the show, we love it. And one thing you could always do to help is share. So share the stream, share the videos. So if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or even Twitter, just hit reply, retweet or share or like, etc. All those help. There are a lot of different ways to help. Sign up for Wolfpack, sign up to help Just Democratic candidates. Help in any way that you can. It doesn't have to just be money. But of course, we do need money to run this operation. So if you do join, we appreciate it, that's all. So tytnetwork.com/join. And again, it's just $10 a month. Same price as the ticket for admission to our Sweet 16 birthday party on Thursday. I'm getting a little nervous as we get closer to it.
Nervous?
Yeah, because at the end, I'm gonna do like a little bit of a political speech.
And you're nervous about it?
A little bit, I don't have it prepared yet.
Get out of here.
All right, if you're a member, you could watch at home, okay? So tytnetwork.com/sweet16 if you want to get membership through that. All right, what's next, Anna?
All right. Marco Rubio and Ivanka Trump are taking the issue of paid family leave and championing it. They are trying to find a solution that would basically allow for families to take time off of work in order to take care of their children and not have to deal with the financial burden of not earning any money while they do so. Now, we talked about their upcoming proposal recently, and just to fill you in, just to remind you and catch you up with what they want to do, the Rubio-Trump scheme, which is based on a proposal from the Conservative Independent Women's Forum, new parents would fund their parental leave by tapping into their Social Security benefits early. So just to get a little more specific, parents would get 12 weeks of benefits for what the Independent Women's Forum claims would be 6 weeks or only 6 weeks of Social Security retirement benefits down the line. Okay, so you should watch our previous video on this. We break it down even further, but for the sake of this conversation, I want to focus on how this conservative organization, the Women's Forum or the Independent Women's Forum, is excited about this because it would essentially destroy Social Security. Okay, so let me give you the details on that. Now, if we start borrowing from Social Security, not only would we have to wait even longer in order to retire, it would also further defund a program that is taking care of our elderly right now. And also it would set a precedent. If the government says, oh, you want to take money out of Social Security in order to pay for this and that, well, maybe we can also use it for things like food stamps and other government programs, which conservatives would love, right? But there's also, setting that standard is something that excites these conservatives. So case in point, Carrie Lucas, who wrote for The Federalist and talked about how this would set this great standard and it could solve all the Social Security problems that conservatives hate. Now, the group's managing director, Carrie Lucas, writes that a policy like this could have the added benefit of changing Americans' thinking about Social Security as a bedrock benefit that cannot be changed.
Yeah, so it's worse than you thought. And let me give you more context. 82% of Americans believe there should be paid family leave. 82%. So what do the Republicans want to do? They want to kill two birds with one stone. So they don't actually want you to have paid family leave because that might mean taxes or some corporations chip in. Employees would also chip in, right? But God forbid that corporations should ever pay a dime because they own all these politicians. So instead, they're going to make you pay for it. What part of paid leave is you paying for? Like if you're paying for it, then it's not paid.
It's not paid leave, exactly.
Right, so you're paying through it through Social Security. Either they're going to make you wait longer before you can retire, or they're going to cut the amount of Social Security you're getting for the rest of your life. So that's mission number one, which is don't actually do paid leave, while pretending to do paid leave because it's actually incredibly popular, okay? And then mission number 2 is if we at the same time we could destroy Social Security by making it a common thing that, hey, if you want to pay for something, just take it out of their Social Security.
That's right.
Keep on taking it out until they can never retire. God, they're loathsome. They're loathsome. They don't work for you. They work for their donors. And it is a great redistribution of wealth to the top.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And by the way, I want to give some conservatives and some libertarians credit, because when this upcoming proposal by Marco Rubio was first reported, there were conservatives and libertarians that thought it was a really bad idea and criticized it because it would destroy Social Security. But again, Carrie Lucas, who is with the Independent Women's Forum, disagrees. She thinks it's great because, again, it would fundamentally change the way that we think of Social Security, and it would essentially set a precedent that would further destroy it. So let me give you more details about what she writes, and then I'll give you some information about her, where she lives, and the type of system she gets to take advantage of. Now, she writes, importantly, unlike other public assistance programs, this Social Security parental leave program isn't a freebie or a handout. People would know that accessing benefits would mean they will have to wait for benefits later. She continues to say, people support public assistance, but they also don't want public assistance to be exploited and used as a long-term crutch. This approach would encourage an important mental shift with lasting implications for government's safety nets more broadly. So she comes at it from the perspective of, all these people with their fraudulent behavior are taking advantage of these safety nets. Like, she comes at it from people are looking for government handouts. Okay, by the way, she has 5 children and she lives in Germany, okay, where they have one of the most progressive paid family leave programs in the world. So I'll give you the details on that in just a minute.
So if she's talking about government handouts in terms of paid family leave, it's not. You get the money from both employers and employees to pay for that paid family leave. And it's then they're going to get used to it. What do you mean get used to it? It lasts for 12 weeks. There's just no way around it. And it's only when you have a baby. What are you going to do? Keep having babies just to get paid family leave? Like maybe have like 5 babies because you live in a socialist country that has paid family leave like Germany? I don't know, maybe that was your experience. That's why you're projecting onto others. But no, nobody's having babies to get a non-paid leave that they're gonna have to take out of their retirement. And if you're referring to Social Security, long-term crutch, they get there, they're retired, and they're gonna stay retired, and then we're gonna have to pay them with the money they paid into the system. What crutch? We pay into Social Security. We pay into Medicare. What crutch? No, they hate anything that helps actual citizens.
No, she goes further and just get a load of the assumption that she makes here, which I would argue is not an accurate assumption. She says many Americans are perfectly capable and happy to continue working and tend to be better off financially than ever before. She's talking about individuals who are elderly. She's saying they'd rather work longer, they'd rather postpone retirement. Based on what evidence? Based on what data? She continues.
They have an amazing social safety net in Germany. So in the comfort of that safety net, she's sitting there telling us about how, no, go back to the mines, okay? Look, if we prefer to work longer, you know what we could do? We could work longer.
That's
Nobody's
right.
stopping us. So there's a really easy way to find out if we prefer that. And some people do. No, that's not what you're saying. You're saying you must work longer. Even though you paid into Social Security your whole life, I'm not gonna let you retire. I'm gonna take that money and use it for other things. By the way, they already spent the Social Security money. They spent it on tax cuts for the rich, on wars, defense contractors, oil company subsidies. And now, if you ever watched Manasel, the movie about us, there's that scene when I'm on MSNBC and I'm yelling at a former Republican congressman because he's got that smirk on his face and he's saying, but we already spent it. They're the worst.
It gets worse. She says adjustments to the retirement age might not seem so unthinkable when put in the context of these trade-offs. So understand what she's saying there. Conservatives notoriously want to postpone the retirement age as much as possible. That debate comes up every once in a while, and it's so incredibly frustrating. It's like, 65, that's too early for retirement. Let's postpone it to 67, 67 and a half, 68. And so by the time my generation's ready to retire, who knows what age retirement is going to, what age they're going to decide retirement is acceptable. She continues to say, encouraging people to think about Social Security's assets as if those benefits are their property for use now or at retirement could even encourage people to want to move more in that direction and transform the current pay-as-you-go system into one that pre-funds future benefits and with assets that belong to individuals. So again, we all know how Social Security works. I pay into Social Security, but that's not money that goes into a savings account for me personally. It's money that goes toward taking care of the country's elderly. So we don't have elderly homeless people, that was the whole point of Social Security. But under this system, it would be like we have our individual accounts that we borrow from. But what happens if you aren't making a lot of money? What happens if you're unemployed? Does that mean that once you hit retirement age, we're just gonna let you live on the streets? I don't know. It seems like that's the kind of system that she's in favor of. Now, let's talk about Germany, which again is the country that she lives in, and they have significant safety nets there. So for instance, when it comes to paid family leave, there are benefits that start kicking in before the baby is even born. In fact, individuals in Germany get 6 weeks of paid leave prior to the baby being born. After the baby is born, they get 8 weeks, that's guaranteed, right? This jumps to 12 weeks if more than one baby is born. After that, you can work or you can take family leave. That would be up to 3 years, but only 1 year with 60% of your last pay. So it kind of tapers off depending on how long you decide to take that family leave. But think about that. You could take up to 3 years of paid family leave. It doesn't mean you're gonna get your full salary, but you're gonna get a significant amount of money so you can be able to take care of your child. And then, of course, you'll be ready to go back to work. And by the way, one other thing, we have an aging population in the US. It's not as disastrous as it is in Japan right now, but one of the issues that conservatives are worried about is that less people are having children. Yeah, why would people, especially people in my generation, want to have children if we live in the type of country that has no interest in supporting us and making it possible for us to raise our kids and then go back to work?
So it's pretty easy for Carrie Lucas to say you shouldn't get paid family leave unless we take it out of your Social Security, because by German law, she might have had 15 years of paid family leave. Oh man, the hypocrisy is unreal. I don't know how long she's lived in Germany, but it is very easy to say that out of the comfort of a socialist country. Hey, by the way, you should leave. If you don't like socialism, you don't like that social safety net that they have in Germany, hey, come back here, live with the rest of us and suffer. So, and if you're outside the country, and a lot of our viewers are, I know that you've got to be in disbelief, but do you know that the United States is the only industrialized nation that offers no paid time off for new mothers? So theoretically, you got to, if you like, look, most of the people in the country live paycheck to paycheck. That means you have the baby, you got to show up to work the next day. The barbarity of that for the rest of the world is incomprehensible. Do you know that in 1993, we first passed the Family and Medical Leave Act that allowed for 12 weeks of unpaid leave. Before 93, if you took a day off because you had a baby, they could fire you. Like, oh, you had a baby, that's really nice. You're fired. You're not, back to the mines. If you're not working in the coal mines, you're fired, okay? A baby, I don't give a damn about your baby. You're gone because you're costing me a nickel of profit, okay? Now, you have to allow for 12 weeks, but it's all unpaid. I don't know how you're gonna survive. I don't know how your kid's gonna survive. I don't care. That's what the US government says, bootstraps. That's what they throw at you. Now, when we propose, and it has 82% popularity in the country because we're all sick of getting crushed. Can we have paid family leave? Well, Marco Rubio and Ivanka Trump have a special little trick for you. Let me take your energy around that issue and use it against you, and give you a terrible proposal where we don't actually pay for it and we ruin Social Security. Look, Donald Trump's a monster. I get it. I talk about it all the time. His daughter, who gets credit for being moderate, is no such thing. She's also along the same lines. But most importantly, establishment Republicans are okay. It's just Donald Trump. That's what you hear on cable news all the time. No, establishment Republicans like Marco Rubio are also monsters. They don't believe in Social Security. They don't believe in paid family leave. And he's the guy, and he's getting credit on TV every day for Marco Rubio's for paid family leave, when it's a goddamn trick. But nobody on TV has two brain cells to rub together, or they don't care they're part of the corruption. So they're like, don't worry, once we get rid of Donald, we'll have a good Republican like Marco Rubio in, and he will more effectively steal from you.
It's insane how little we really put America first, right? I mean, don't think about the context of that phrase. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about taking care of our own. We have no interest as a country to take care of our own. We have an interest to cut the taxes for the corporations. We have all the interest in the world to fund weapons manufacturers and private contractors and the Defense Department. But when it comes to taking care of our own and making sure that people live comfortable, stable lives, no interest. Drives me
look
crazy.
at the two stories we did today. I know we got to go on other stories, but the healthcare story, the Heather Holland dies because she can't afford a $116 copay. She had the flu, she's dead. Because that's what we do in this country, we crush you.
It's terrifying, it's
right?
terrifying.
Paid family leave, no, we crush you. We have created runaway robots. It's like a fucking it's like a science fiction movie. We created the robots, we programmed to maximize profit and crush everything in their path. Guess who's in their path? We are, we all are. So corporations have bought all the politicians, they bought the Supreme Court, now they're systematically crushing us, so they squeeze every single red cent out of you. And if in the meanwhile you die, whatever, you gotta rewrite the code. Have I said it enough? wolf-pack.com, rewrite the goddamn code. We gotta get democracy back. I mean, we're the only industrialized nation that doesn't mind nonstop brutalizing its own citizens. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, believe it or not, there's one guy in the world who's a world leader, at least one guy who's more misogynistic than Donald Trump. And then I think that this is a progressive proposal maybe in Utah, but one that is not well-intentioned.
Right.
Or maybe it's well-intentioned, but
I don't know if it's a progressive proposal. Just come back, we'll give you the details.
All right, well, it's bad.
Not been easy for me. I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. All my life, I was told no.
He said I had small hands. They're not small. I never heard that one before.
Hey, Dave. As you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crash.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts. And it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
Look, we're doing interviews over there at youtube.com/TYT interviews. And we've done some amazing ones recently.
So now, of course, you know the person most widely considered to be the most progressive senator is Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Why not back him during the 2016 primaries? Why be a Democrat at all?
And we're in the time where you cannot, in good conscience, sit on the sidelines of history in 2017. Right.
So my uncle's a great guy on my mom's side. On my dad's side, I have a great uncle too. But on my mom's side, he will never ever eat the last bite. It doesn't matter. He's not going to eat it. He wants to make sure that somebody else has it. If you need a shirt, he'll give you the shirt off his back. He is so incredibly generous. That's why my nickname for him is aspiration.com. Aspiration.com, way too generous. Okay, no monthly service fees, no minimum monthly balance, no minimum monthly deposit. You don't have to pay for any ATMs anywhere in the world. Portugal, sorry, you don't have to pay for the ATM. Las Vegas, no ATM fees, not if you're with Aspiration.com. Up to 1% annual percentage yield, that's the best in the business. And they give away 10% of their revenue to charity. Just like my uncle, Aspiration.com, too generous. Back on the Young Turks, these tweets are too good, I gotta read them to you. The Mad Lib says, if my Social Security benefits are a handout, then I'd like to stop handing in my part of my paycheck to FICA, please.
Yes.
Because that's my effing money and I want my return on investment. Goddamn right I'm entitled to my money. There you go, Mad Lib, earning your title and you're right. Sexy Speed Racer says, who's gonna hire all these older workers when they lose their jobs? Not their beloved corporations. I'm presently 61 and can't find a decent job. Screw the GOP. Exactly. Captain Jinglepants says the Democrats have nothing to run on anymore. They failed the Dreamers miserably. They fought for nothing. They shot the government for nothing. They got nothing. It's over for the Democrats. Man, we got some bipartisan fire and fury here, and they both deserve it. And finally, our own Bart Kyle writes in. He's doing audio for us right now. My father died when I was 2 years old from a construction accident. My sister and I received bereavement benefits through my father's Social Security till we were 18 years old. It was used to keep clothes on our back, food on our stomach, and pay the bills to hold my family together. Social Security was definitely a safety net for my family when life throws you a curveball. Now, Bart's one of the hardest working guys here and will often close up here, okay? So don't talk to us about handouts, okay? It's so that we all take care of our own. We take care of each other, and that is what decent people do, and that is what decent countries do. Thanks for pointing that out, Bart. All right, what's next, Anna?
Okay. An elementary school in Utah is catching a little bit of heat, just a little bit, because of a policy that they had for their St. Valentine's Day dance. Now, the school administrators believe that it would be a good idea to let the females in the school know that they are not allowed to say no to the boys who ask them to dance. And one of the parents was justifiably outraged by this. When Natalie Richards reached out to the school principal, he told her the dance was set up this way for a long time, and there they never had any problem. Also, Weber School District official Lane Findlay says that the rule was intended to teach students how to be inclusive. She also said, we want to promote kindness, and so we want you to say yes when someone asks you to dance. Okay. So basically these little girls are not allowed, based on this school's policy, not allowed to say no when a boy asks her to dance, because the feelings for the little boys tend to be a little more important than the feelings that the little girls have. This is such a bad idea, and I'm glad that the parent here, Natalie Richards, called them out on it. I don't know whether or not they're planning on changing this policy, but it sends a really bad message, because one of the biggest issues that we're seeing with this Me Too movement is the fact that the men who are being accused of predatory behavior or any type of misconduct had this sense of entitlement. And I think that it's societal conditioning. It is, you know, the type of culture that we've had in the United States for a long time, where men have been told time and time again that they are entitled to certain things. And also on the flip side, you're telling women that they should feel bad if they say no to a guy, that they should be more concerned about the guy's feelings as opposed to their own feelings. This sets a really dangerous standard, and I hope that the school changes their minds about it.
So I don't know if this is a progressive or a conservative thing, because it might be a progressive thing in that, like, you don't want people to feel bad or feel left out. So it reminds me of when they canceled hugging at graduation in some of the schools, at high school graduation. Remember we did that story?
I don't remember
because of how the unhugged felt. Okay, I'm serious, that's a real story, okay? So I don't know if we're not your run-of-the-mill liberals or whatever, right? But
I don't know if this is a liberal policy.
I don't know.
I haven't seen any politics behind this.
And it is Utah, which is of course overall very, very conservative. But anyway, it's okay if every once in a while somebody says no. And especially in the context that Anna's talking about, and these are 6th graders and you're teaching them. The rule is literally called just don't say no.
This is crazy.
No.
This is crazy, this is insane. Okay, so for the sake of this conversation, let's extend this to a broader discussion about something that I actually didn't believe occurred, but actually does occur, and now I feel like we need to address it. The coddling thing, okay? Because coddling is actually happening. We're seeing it on college campuses right now, where students are losing their minds over speakers who don't agree with their politics. We can't have this happen, okay? We can't be overly concerned about people feeling offended or people getting their feelings hurt or crushed. This is life. Life basically presents you with a bunch of assholes, okay? Like, you're not gonna be sheltered from the meanies for the rest of your life. You have to deal with reality. You know, yes, boys and girls both need to understand that at some point in your life, you're gonna face rejection. You're gonna face rejection when you apply for a job, when you apply to go to certain schools. Rejection is just part of life. We need to toughen these kids up a little more.
Yeah, and look, sometimes it's a little overstated, but there are some places where they have the safe spaces, et cetera. But look, it depends. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any safe spaces. There should be some place where you could relax and know that you're not going to get harassed or assaulted, et cetera. And it's nice to go home and have your parents take care of you or something like that, or even in a dorm to feel like, hey, this is not the place where we're gonna debate, where we're gonna get attacked, right? But that's not the whole world. The whole world is filled with people who disagree, and rejection and surprises and curveballs and tough times, and you're gonna get knocked down. The only question is whether you get back up. Now that's not as good a Hallmark card as Anna's "The World is Full of Assholes," but that's the reality. Like the other day, my kid he's 7 years old. He was in a soccer tournament, and I was worried that they were all going to get medals, right? Because they're all 7, and it turns out they weren't, and only the champions were going to get the trophy. And my son was so excited to get the trophy. He wanted to play so hard. And they did, they got it, by the way, not a big deal.
Yeah.
And then he proudly took a picture with the trophy. That's how it's supposed to be. And if you didn't win, and there were plenty of times he didn't win, and I certainly didn't win, then you fight harder next time, and that's life.
I just feel like it builds character and it builds willpower. And I don't know, I know that I'm considered a millennial, but I just grew up in a different household, you know, where my immigrant parents basically told me, if you fail at something, it's not everyone else's fault. It's probably because you're not working hard enough. Maybe you need to do this. Maybe you should attempt to do things differently. If I got rejected by anything, like I did ballet growing up, right? If I didn't get the solo I wanted, they wouldn't go and yell at the dance instructor about how I didn't get that solo. You know, they would tell me, you need to work harder, you need to practice more. I just feel like this culture that we're setting up where everyone needs to be concerned about everyone else's feelings is a bad idea.
All right, and last two things on this. Look, this whole idea of, and I've seen other liberals honestly teach their kids, they never want to say no to their kids because they think that's negative and not the right way to go. My parents said no to me all the time. You know why? Because we didn't have money. So hey, can I buy that? No. Can we get a bike? No. Can we get a TV? No. Okay, because we didn't have the money, and that's the world we live in, and that's okay. And then you work harder and you get it. I had to work until I could pay for my own bike and could pay for my own black and white TV. Yeah, that's how old I am. And then finally, I'm getting no's from women. Man, I got hundreds of those. So. And you know what it did? It helped me to get better and better, right? So you go and you cross your arms at a junior high school dance, and you realize that doesn't work. You go up and go, can I get a dance? And you say, no, that doesn't work. And slowly you get better at it, and you figure out, hey, how do I make this person happy and want to go out with me, etc. And if you never get that, and you just get fake yeses, it doesn't help you.
Right. No one is entitled to anything, period. Unless you paid into things like Social Security, then you should be entitled to that money. But that's a political discussion that I won't get into. But when it comes to social situations, you're not entitled to anything. So let's move on. All right, Duterte. This story is insane. Rodrigo Duterte, the leader of the Philippines, has said some pretty terrifying things about female rebels. In fact, during a recent speech, he said the following about women who happen to be rebels. Tell the soldiers there's a new order coming from the mayor. We won't kill you, we will just shoot your vagina.
Ooh.
He continued to say, if there is no vagina, it would be useless. And what he means there is that if it's a woman without a vagina, then she's useless, because that's the only thing women are good for.
So I had to read that 2-3 times to make sure that that's really what he meant. Like, really? And no, that's what he meant. He meant you should shoot them in the vagina, because if you take out their vagina, what good would a woman do? Man. He makes Trump look like a humanitarian.
So he has a history of saying misogynistic things, but more importantly, basically statements that are violent toward women. Let me give you some examples. He threatens women, but when he's challenged, he insists it was all a joke. Just last week, his spokesperson actually accused women of overreacting, and that the president's comments are, just jokes. He's messing around. I mean, that's funny. Come on, just laugh. His political friend was quoted as saying, Duterte has also made headlines for joking about rape of a kidnapped Australian who was later killed, and for telling troops to rape women in conflict.
So that's not a joke. And then, of course, there were rapes. And so, and when you're the leader of a country and that's the tone that you set, like he said, kill the drug dealers. And you know what they did? They killed drug dealers, they killed drug users, and then they started killing people that nobody had any idea whether they had anything to do with drugs, because he allowed vigilantism, and thousands of innocent Filipinos died. So now when he goes to tell people raped women who you're opposed to and then shoot them in the vagina, likely that's exactly what they'll do.
I mean, right now, the vigilante justice is terrifying. Tens of thousands of people are being shot and killed with no due process, just simple suspicion of drug trafficking or drug use. And when you set that kind of culture up, when you embolden people to carry out this type of vigilante justice, which is really injustice, all sorts of innocent people are gonna lose their lives. And he's just basically sanctioning this type of violence against women. It's a scary situation to live in.
One last thing, he attacks female political opponents by making fun of their looks and judges them whether they're sexually attractive enough or not.
Oh, sounds familiar.
that does sound familiar. That's exactly what Donald Trump did to, for example, Carly Fiorina, who was also a Republican during the Republican primaries.
Mika Brzezinski.
He did it to Mika, and he did it to so many other women. And so it's a shade of difference. One grabs them by the genitals and makes fun of their appearance instead of the other one also makes fun of their appearance, says don't just grab them by the genitals, do a little bit worse.
And they both will say that they were just joking around once they get called out for their rhetoric. So, all right, I want to skip ahead to the food stamp story because I really want to cover it, so let's do it. Donald Trump has rolled out his recent budget proposal, and of course, it includes deep cuts to social programs and social safety nets, including Medicare and Medicaid. Another target for the Trump administration is the food stamp program, which low-income families rely on in order to put food on the table for their children. Now, recently, Mick Mulvaney, who is the White House budget director, was speaking about this during a press conference, and listen to the proposal that he just made. Take a listen.
What we do is propose that for folks who are on food stamps, part, not all, part of their benefits come in the actual sort of, and I don't want to steal somebody's copyright, but a blue apron type program where you actually receive the food instead of receive the cash. It lowers the cost to us because we can buy prices at wholesale whereas they have to buy it at retail. It also makes sure that they're getting nutritious food. So we're pretty excited about that.
So he used the brand Blue Apron, which, by the way, delivers fresh ingredients to consumers who purchase their product. But that is not what would happen under the model that the Trump administration is proposing. Now, keep in mind that the Trump administration proposed cutting food stamps by $17 billion in 2019 and more than $213 billion over the next decade. So if you think that the government would deliver fresh, delicious food to people who need food stamps, of course, you'd be wrong. Under the Trump proposal, which the Agriculture Department has dubbed America's Harvest Box, all households receiving more than $90 per month in benefits, that's 81% of SNAP households overall, would begin receiving about half their benefits in the form of government-purchased, non-perishable food items. So what falls under the category of non-perishable food items? Are those fresh foods that are healthy and nutritious for people? No, of course not. It includes shelf-stable milk, juice, grains, cereal, pasta, peanut butter, beans, and canned meat, fruits, and vegetables.
Only canned ones.
Because canned meat, canned fruit, and canned vegetables are really nutritious for you.
So, all right, why are they doing this? What are the problems with this? And then I got good news for you on why it's not gonna pass. So, it's a twofer on why they're doing this. One, they cut the budget, so they gave away all this money to the rich in their tax cuts, so they need to find the money somewhere, so they're gonna take it from the poor. You need $90 a month. $90 a month.
$90 a month to feed your family.
Yeah.
Living high off the hog, right?
Yeah, but they're gonna take that away from you. Everybody in the top 1% got a tax break of over $50,000 per year, okay? The rich get $50,000 a year. For you, they're gonna take away your $90 because they gotta make it up. Number two is, it's going to be crony capitalism. They're going to give it to whoever gives them more donations. They're going to say, you're going to get the government contract to give this food, okay?
That's right.
Now, they say, well, look, you could cut the price on all this food because at least we're buying it wholesale. Well, that seems to make some sense instead of retail, right? But wait, how about distribution? Now, normally when you give them the coupons, people go buy it on their own and you don't have to deliver the food to them. Well, that is about a third of the cost for Blue Apron as an example. Of all their costs is just distribution. So there goes a lot of your savings from wholesale versus retail. And then on top of that, how about if their person is a diabetic or they're a senior citizen or they're kids, they need different food. The logistics of trying to figure that out is a nightmare. And you know what that leads to? Government bureaucracy and big government. So it's not gonna work, it's gonna cost you more money, not less money. Now, is that why it's not gonna get passed? No. They do that for crony capitalism in a second, okay? No, it's not gonna pass for two reasons. One, there are just simply too many Americans on food stamps and a lot of them are Republicans. So in places like West Virginia, Kentucky, Arkansas, I'm keeping it real.
Mississippi.
And they're gonna come out and go, wait, you're gonna cut my food stamps? Then I got $1.50 extra on the tax cuts per week, but I just lost all this money in food stamps. I don't like that. Like they tried tolls in Texas and then people rebelled, right? And then the second and more important reason why it's not gonna pass, because you know who's against it? Walmart, Target, and all the other giant stores.
A huge portion of their revenue comes from food stamp recipients. So they're already going after the government over this proposal.
So normally you get your food stamp and you go to the Walmart, probably where you work, because they don't pay you enough for you to be able to live without food stamps, and then you spend the food stamps at Walmart. If the government sends you the food, then you can't shop at Walmart. Walmart is a giant lobbyist. Okay, they're gonna send all their guys to lobby, and they're gonna buy all those politicians and make sure they kill this bill. So that's my guess as to how it'll go down, but it is another terrible Republican trick to redistribute the wealth from the average and poor Americans to the very top.
Also, I always find it fascinating how the Republican Party consistently argues that Americans need less government in their lives. They need less of the nanny state, less of the government bureaucracy, but at the same time, they propose ridiculous things like this that would essentially have them picking and choosing what you eat if you don't make enough money to put food on the table for your children. And by the way, some might say, well, I mean, if you're in a situation where you need food stamps and you're using, government money, maybe the government should be able to tell you what you can and can't eat. But think about the number of Americans who actually have full-time jobs and they still don't make enough money to put food on the table for their kids. I mean, that is the real issue here. The fact that we have full-time employees in the US and they're paid so little, they're not paid a living wage, and these corporations have to be subsidized by the government in the form of food stamps for their employees. I mean, this system is so messed up. So all those millions of people, tens of millions of people that you see on food stamps, don't think that they're all sitting on their couches watching TV and they're lazy. A lot of them do have full-time jobs.
That's right, and they still can't afford it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, last story for you guys.
All right. A Pennsylvania pastor was caught in his vehicle in a well-lit neighborhood. He was in the back seat, and in the front seat was a man who was naked and tied by nylon rope.
I thought you were going to say naked and afraid.
Doesn't seem like that gentleman was afraid. It seemed as though that was a consensual situation, okay? But nonetheless, Pastor George Nelson Gregory made a really bad decision when he parked his vehicle in a well-lit neighborhood because it was easy for people in that neighborhood to see what was going on. One resident actually called the cops because he was concerned that his daughter could see the naked man from her bedroom window. So when the cops showed up, they found the situation. Again, the pastor was in the back seat, naked, tied up man was in the front seat. And the story seemed to change based on Gregory's account. So let me give you the details. Now first, officers found the 61-year-old Gregory sitting in the back seat, another man completely nude and bound by nylon rope sitting in the front seat. The pastor told police they occasionally met up to play with each other.
Okay, well, bless your heart.
He also said, I have nothing to hide, I did nothing wrong. But later he kind of switched up his story. He said that cops totally made that up. He never even made those statements. In fact, here's what really happened. He said, quote, I was counseling a young man with a drug problem. It did turn strange, but it wasn't my doing, okay? And I was adamant that I'm not participating in that way. And so that's when the police pulled up and they assumed things, but I'm standing by my story. It's not true. I won't deny that he began to take his clothes off and propositioned me, but I will deny on a stack of Bibles with God as my witness that I did nothing.
Okay, look, if he had left it at the first statement, I did nothing wrong and it was consensual. And by the way, the naked man says it was consensual. And we're done with it. Who cares? You do whatever you want, right? But he brings his wife into it. He says, my wife and I have been counseling this guy, the drug thing. Then what does the drug thing have to do with the nylon rope, right? And you said, he's like, there was nothing I could do. There was nothing you could do as he took his shirt off and then his pants, and then his underwear, and then his socks. And then he tied himself up in the nylon rope.
Exactly.
Okay, and there was still nothing you could do. Oh my God, getting out of the car. You obviously couldn't do that. You had to stay and counsel the poor guy.
I have to jump in. So look, part of me is irritated with this pastor because of the hypocrisy. You know, the LGBT community faced discrimination because of religious people for a very long time and still do to this day. But part of me feels really bad for him because he's been living this life for a long time and that must be a terrible existence. So I have a lot of sympathy for him and I hope that one day he can live his authentic self. His authentic life.
Yeah, and in the immortal words of Anna Kasparian, you do you, boo.
Yes.
If you want to tie a dude up with nylon ropes and have at it, Hoss. But just don't deny who you actually are. Okay, we got to go, guys. Bye-bye. welcome to Rebel Headquarters. Obviously, we just finished up the Young Turks. I want to tell you that if you want to stay for the post game, which is after Rebel Headquarters, we're going to do two stories for you. One is the story that I promised you about justice. We got a little bit of justice today. We didn't get to it in the main show. We'll do it in the post game for the members. And then also something I wrote back in 2010 that I don't know if I'm proud of or really embarrassed about. I'm going to share it with you in the post game because I just came across it. So tytnetwork.com/join to check that out. And if you want to suggest guests or topics for Rebel Headquarters in specific, this is the hub, of course, for progressive news. RebelHQ@tytnetwork.com. That's RebelHQ@tytnetwork.com. Email us and let us know. And we have picked a lot of our guests from your suggestions. Now I'd say almost half the guests are based on emails that you guys have sent in. So thank you for participating. Okay, now let's go to our first guest today. Paul Spencer is running in Arkansas's 2nd District, and he's running against a Republican. And we want to welcome him to Rebel Headquarters. How you doing?
Fantastic. It's great to be here.
Okay, Paul, who's the Republican that's the incumbent in your race?
That would be French Hill. He is a former banker, and he is a darling of the Republican establishment.
And why is he a darling of the Republican establishment?
He votes very consistently with whatever the party needs them to do, whatever Mr. Trump needs them to do. He voted to repeal and replace. He voted for this crazy tax plan that just passed. He's one of the darlings of the NRA. He receives more money from the NRA of anybody else in the House. So he's a good go-to man for the Republican Party.
So how about Democrats challenging him? So it's a Republican +7. So it's actually winnable, especially in a wave election if 2018 is a wave. You know, our audience is very progressive. I think they would naturally ask the question, how do we know who's the most progressive in the race?
Sure. Our main challenger right now just announced the other day, and he came aboard after the DCCC did a fancy poll and basically tested the waters for him. He is a prominent attorney in town. He is a state House member, and he is very well ingratiated with the ruling class of the Democratic Party here in Arkansas. We have, in the 2nd District, we have 90+ zip codes. And my competitor probably get most of his support from 2 or 3 zip codes here in the most populous county of Pulaski County. So he's a good man, but he is definitely not for Medicare for all. He is definitely afraid to go to the big ideas. When he announced earlier, one of the local NPR affiliates, he said that he didn't think a program like, for example, Medicare for All was feasible. My argument for something like that has always been, as a legislator, we're the ones that make things like that feasible. We don't go to Washington to curry favor. We don't go to Washington to make friends. We go there to make the path smooth for everyday Arkansans and everyday Americans. We don't worry about the feasibility of whether something's possible or not. I think what that's code for in reality is it feasible for me to take these positions and still maintain my donor base? Is it feasible for me to take these positions and still ingratiate myself with the DCCC or the DNC?
Yeah, you know, I've got stats on your district here, and the median income is $37,221. So these folks are not rich, and so so when you gear your policies towards the donor class, well, that's by definition not going to serve the people in your district. So you know, so you are for Medicare for all. I see that. What's your stance on campaign finance reform?
I got involved with activism right after the Citizens United decision was handed down. So I've been active here on a local and somewhat national level fighting that money in politics. I ran some ballot measures here in Arkansas that were geared to taking money out of politics. We were able to be crucial in amending the Constitution in Arkansas a couple years back that banned corporate contributions to candidates and banned lobbyist gifts. We attempted to get a couple pieces on the ballot that dealt with dark money and disclosure. So we've been working this for quite some time here in Arkansas, and we've made some headway with that. But I think that it's going to take, it's going to take local efforts like the types of things that we were doing here in the state, but it's also going to take action on a federal level. And I think in concert, that's when you can get the change.
So I see from your bio, you're a multifaceted man. You run a pecan farm and a bee farm.
Yes, sir.
I love these real Americans that we talk to, because look, I've been talking to politicians for as long as we've been doing this show, which is now over 16 years, right? And they're not all rich, but almost. They're almost all wealthy. They worked in banking, they were lawyers, they were, and you got those farms, a pecan farm. That's so awesome. That's so Arkansas. And you taught government and history at Little Rock Catholic High School for boys. So as you're doing those things, why then all of a sudden decide to get into politics, especially when it seems like you got to be, at least in the old days, a millionaire to win?
Right. Well, the farming thing and the bee thing, that's a sideline thing to my teaching, and the teaching's first and foremost in my life. I absolutely love the job of teaching, but the thing is, I've taught government and politics, political philosophy, and when you teach 18-year-old boys, which is who I teach, about John Locke and Rousseau, and you present to them what the system is supposed to be and how the Constitution is supposed to work, and they come up to you and ask you, well, if this is what Locke said, and this is what Jefferson said, and this is what Madison said, how come things are the way they are today? And being the father of 3 sons myself, and seeing these 750 boys that I work with every day as my other sons, at some point, you just have to throw caution to the wind and move forward. Nobody ever got anywhere by just sitting back and let somebody else fight the battles. And the one thing that I've tried to make my students know, and that my own children know, is that you have to take responsibility for your actions. And sometimes you have to take bold steps. And, I'm 51. I was very comfortable being who I was. But this is just something that you feel like you have a moral obligation to do. And I think I'm not at all alone. There are lots of folks across the country that are doing this. I'm associated with 7 other candidates with a group called Tech Solidarity. They put together what's called the Great Slate. And these are all average, normal American people that have repudiated the easy life and went into this. So we went into it knowing that we're getting into, and we know that it's going to be difficult, but we have a superlative staff, and we've been out on the campaign trail for about 6 months now, 7 months actually. We've been to all the rural counties, so it's the reception that we've gotten from a lot of the folks outside in the hinterlands and in Pulaski County itself. So coupled between that and the obligation that I feel like that I have to my students and my family, it made the choice of getting in a lot easier.
So, Paul, you're for a lot of the progressive stuff, so get money out of politics, Medicare for all, paid maternal leave, but you're also for rural development. What does that mean?
Well, here in Arkansas, it can mean a lot of different things, and it has to take a lot of different forms. For example, one of the things that we're advocating is postal banking, for example, and that will not only work in some of the more underprivileged urban areas, but that would be fantastic for the rural areas. It gives access to money for short-term loans rather than having to go to payday lending, the payday lending cartel and so forth. So we think that would be a great thing. The healthcare for all thing is definitely something that transcends any one particular part of the district. My wife is an RN, and she's done healthcare for 25, 30 years, and she presents the whole Medicare for All thing. It's not only just healthcare, it's a financial plan. It's an economic plan. And once you free up that type of money for individuals no longer have to paying for their insurance or allowing them to go out and start their own businesses, that's what the rural areas of Arkansas needs, is for folks to be able to step off and get off the tit, so to speak, of their bosses and their jobs, and they can get out and have their own businesses and so forth. So we're spearheading that in a big way. Internet access here in the 2nd District in some of these counties is abysmal. So, we were earlier on in our campaign, we were out in the field, and this is when Mr. Trump was trying to pick a war with North Korea, and we didn't have internet connection anywhere. So we were kind of in the dark. And as we go out and have town halls and meet with the folks here, it's just amazing what just having reliable, cheap internet would do for the folks around here. It needs to be treated like utility out here. Right now, it's, they hold a knife to your throat and extort whatever money they can get from you. And a lot of times, any place you can go to get internet is a library.
Yep. It's almost like they want to maximize profit and don't actually care about the citizens.
That's pretty much the business plan, is it not? In this capitalist system that we have, laissez-faire capitalist system.
Yep. All right. So I want to give people links where they could find out more about Paul and donate and volunteer if they would like to. So if you're watching live, right there, paulspencer2018.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, the links are always down below in the description box. Just click on them. Take a look at the website, see if you agree with his positions. Small dollar donations make a big difference if you're not taking big dollar donations, and volunteering is always critical to beat the other side's lobbyists. All right, Paul Spencer, thanks for joining us out in Rebel headquarters. We appreciate it.
It was an honor to be here.
Thank you. All right, when we come back, we've got Anita Malik. She's running in Arizona. We got a lot of progressives running in Arizona. Wouldn't it be awesome if we cleaned house? We beat Sheriff Joe Arpaio and some of the corporate Democrats in Arizona. Oh, that would be amazing. All right, let's talk about it when we come back. All right, Rebel Headquarters, we're back. Let's go to our next great guest. Anita Malik joins us. She's running in Arizona's 6th District. Anita, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
No problem. Anita, as I'm going through your resume, no joke, working full-time as a COO for a large digital tech company. In fact, you worked for a lot of tech companies. You've got 40 under 40 lists on here. Regular guests on NPR's Tell Me More. And the list goes on and on. So what makes you want to run for office?
Thank you for kind of highlighting that in the resume. As I've been through my career, I've been relatively successful and I'm proud of those accomplishments working in tech and working in journalism. But I noticed something shift for me in my life, which was my father came here to build the American dream. He knew if you followed those rules, you could do that. He built a middle-class lifestyle for our family. But I and my family were suddenly having a hard time making ends meet, just like most Americans. Most of us are living paycheck to paycheck, over 70% of Americans. And that struck me. There's a rising cost of childcare, of healthcare, prescription drugs, and not knowing if we can save for our retirement and have that security concerned me. So I realized there's an American struggle going on. I was experiencing that myself. And I felt like change needed to happen, and there was no progress being made, right? Everything seems to be going backwards in the opposite direction. That fear, that concern for my children led me to where we are today.
So I want to get to your policies in a second because I don't have them in my notes, and I'm curious what they are. And I'm sure the audience is, of course, as well. But first, let's talk about your district a little bit, because your district appears to be very conservative. You're represented by David Schweikert, who is one of the worst Republicans. And he is won by 28 points, 30 points, 24 points. On the other hand, Mitt Romney won by 21 points, but Trump only won by 10 points. So is there a shift going on in that district, or is it just that people found Trump so loathsome?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. This district has traditionally been red. And what we've noticed, it's been red because people feel like that's just how it is. And so the Democrats, the people, the moderate Republicans, even the independents haven't been coming out to vote. And we are noticing the frustration they have with not only what's happening in DC with the Trump administration, but also with David Schweikert not being available to people. He is not a representative that's accessible. He doesn't hold town halls. He's not there listening to his constituents. And it suddenly has become a safe environment for people to say, you know what, I don't agree with this. This might have always been a conservative district, but we don't all think like this, and we want change. And so we're talking to people across parties and noticing that even the moderate Republicans, they are not happy with David Schweikert. So the sentiment is changing. There is momentum behind us to finally do something in this district, because I think there's enough voices. We just have all been a little bit complacent that, you know what, you can't change it, it's Arizona. Well, Arizona's a lot more purple than people believe.
So, Anita, what's your stance then on, let's go through some of the issues, on campaign finance reform?
So number one, we've got to overturn Citizens United. Campaign finance reform is a primary issue for me, because as you enter this race as a candidate, you know how much money plays a role. And I believe most of our issues that we're facing right now are because the leaders in DC are bought and they're beholden. And if we can't fix this problem, we are going to continue to have these problems with the core issues that are affecting millions of Americans. So I, as a candidate, will not accept PAC money or super PAC money and corporation money. This is about the people. It's a people-powered movement. I think along with campaign finance reform and coming up with some type of publicly funded system, we need to also look at making voting more accessible and more secure, and look at what technologies we can bring into that.
How about minimum wage? What do you think it should be?
Minimum wage, a minimum of the minimum wage should be 15. I think that's not even enough, but I think we have to start somewhere with our economy and making sure businesses can support that change. But that's definitely on my list.
Healthcare?
I believe we need to get to universal coverage. We need some type of single payer system. What I would love for candidates and for the leaders in DC to work toward is, how do we get there? Let's start making iterative progress with the system we have today to get there, because we're a smart country and we are not moving forward in any direction to get to universal coverage.
Okay, and then curious what you think about college for all.
I believe in community college for all. And that is bringing also trade programs into the community colleges. I think our economy can support that immediately. That is something that we need to do. From there, we need to look at the university level and move iteratively to that, also bringing down those costs more immediately and looking at the margins of where that money is going.
Okay, is there any positions that I know this is a weird question, and I think it might be the first time that I'm going to ask it at Rebel headquarters.
Okay.
But any positions where you find yourself a little bit more conservative, gun rights or anything along those lines?
Definitely not gun rights. I believe in this. We can preserve the Second Amendment and keep our families safe. And so, and I think most gun owners would agree, I want to keep that Second Amendment strong for everybody. But to do that, we have to make some changes to the legislation that's out there now, because right now we're not doing that. I don't think I fall conservative in anything. I think what's different about me as a candidate is that I talk about the economy, I talk about business, I come from that world. And it's very important to me, like I told you earlier, it's why I entered this race. I believe that we are not dealing with the issues that affect everybody's wallet. You know, as a country, as workers, we're working harder and harder, but we're keeping less of that in our pockets. And if you can talk to everybody throughout this district, and I believe in many communities, about what are you keeping for yourself and how are you looking forward to your security and retirement for your family? And are you able to enjoy your family today because you have a healthy work-life balance? All those things are things that everybody cares about. And I think that what makes me different is I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about, healthy worker, healthy economy. Tax reform is not necessarily a bad word to me, and I think that makes me a little different. But I want to see tax reform that rewards, let's call it good behavior, that is something that corporations are doing for their community. So if they're going to provide daycare for working moms, let's give them a tax credit. If they're going to guarantee the creation of well-paying jobs, not that all that money is just going to go to automation, then again, let's give them a tax credit. And the list goes on. I mean, if they're going to do wellness programs, stress relief programs, because stress is killing this country because we're working so hard, then I support that. And I think that's what makes me a little bit different.
Yeah, and I want the audience to know that they actually did propose an amendment to this particular tax cut where they said that the corporations could only get the tax cuts if they delivered on jobs, and the Republicans voted it down. Right. They said, no, we do not want it attached to jobs, because of course they don't care about that. They just wanted the corporations to get the money. But you were a COO, you were in management, et cetera. So do you believe in trickle-down economics, or do you believe in a different form of economics?
I do not believe in trickle-down economics. I mean, we've seen that doesn't work. And in leading large teams, you see that in corporations, even ones that I've worked in throughout my career. The wealth tends to stay at the top. And it is always a fight to get young workers, to get people new to the industry, or women and minorities, frankly, to get that equality in the income that they're receiving. And I think the same thing is you can use that parallel to what's happening in our economy with taxes and the 1% having it all. It doesn't trickle down.
So Anita, last thing here, you're not taking any corporate money, you're not taking any PAC money. So how are you going to win this race?
So we are counting on those small donations for people that are really committed to the vote, and I think that adds up. We may not match our competitor dollar for dollar in this race, but I don't think that's important. We've seen trends across the country now that it is not the top fundraiser that wins. And we need to get outside of that old school thinking about that as how you win a race. Money is important. We need it. We're running a lean campaign. We're running a very heavy digital campaign. That's my background. And we're also a people-powered campaign. So we're out there knocking on the doors, having the small coffees and house parties. We do something every day to reach 1 to 15 voters. It doesn't matter to me. We are doing that. And we have amassed a great number of volunteers. And what's so refreshing about those volunteers that are out there helping us knock on those doors, and I'm personally hitting so many myself, is that they're all new to this. They all have, no one's ever done it. They're not the activists they're on our side too. But these new volunteers that just want to get involved and they just want change, that is the momentum we're seeing here. And that's how we're going to win it.
So I want to give people Anita's links here in case you want to help her and you want to be one of those volunteers. Look, I always think the time is way more important than the money, but of course she's not taking PAC money, so money matters as well, so that she can hire more staffers. So our website is anitafораrizona.com, and you see the donation and volunteer links. I tell you this every time, but don't forget, all the links are in the description box on YouTube and in the comment section on Facebook. Just click on them. If you're in that district, get involved, get involved. And I've seen it happen 1,000 times where volunteers beat people with a lot of money, because it's knocking on doors and it's convincing people, and you know, they don't like corruption as much as you don't like corruption. So that's an easy conversation starter, let alone all the other things that Anita's fighting for. So please check it out. And she's got over 100 volunteers already, but go join her army, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Anita, really appreciate it. And if you could take down Schweikert, you would do the whole country a favor.
We are going to do it. We're ready for the battle, so thank you.
All right, wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of time. Like I said in the post game for TYT members, something that I found that I wrote in 2010, was it prophetic or was it pathetic? Interesting. TYTnetwork.com/join to find out. Go.